大家好，我是清华大学计财系的马瑞辰教授。这几天我们清华大学有主办几个全球性的国际的论坛跟研讨会，然后这一次研讨会当中，我们很荣幸的邀请了远从美国而来的一个房地产大师James Shilling 我先简单介绍 James 这个 Dr. Shilling Dr. Shilling 是 Purdue 大学的这个博士Dr. Shilling has obtained his master and PhD in Purdue, and he's currently teaching in DePaul University, right?
University.
And also, Dr. Shilling has taught in the past other university, like Wisconsin State University and Cambridge University and UPenn Wharton School, and also, I believe, Louisiana State University. Great, wonderful teaching experiences. And he has done a lot of research in real estate finance and economics, and published so many journal papers, studies, and books, and everything. He's just a master in real estate. Anything you want to add on to that? Didn't say enough. Less than 1%. You want to add more?
Sure.
James?
You know, one thing I would like to add is that when I started this career, I never thought it would take me around the world. It's just been an amazing journey for me. And this is my 4th time here in Taiwan.
Wow.
And I just love coming here to Taiwan, and I'd love to see how Taiwan has changed over the years, right? First time I was here was 1988. And it has changed dramatically, so I'm kind of anxious to talk about.
You have seen the change,
improvements.
Improvements. Become better?
Improvements, as well as, you know, there's lots of issues facing Taiwan and Taipei right now in terms of housing costs. So I'd like to, you know, kind of launch in and talk about those as well.
And this time you come to Hsinchu. Have you been to Hsinchu before?
This is the first time here. Yeah,
you know, it's a science park.
Yeah. It's
our TSMC.
Absolutely. Took a tour of that yesterday. It's really in the forefront of everything, right? Yes, we are. Absolutely.
We are very glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
And we do have a few questions for you. Well, and actually we are asking that for our young generation, our young students. And we know you have finished your study in grad school and both in finance and real estate and in the States. So could you please give our students some feedbacks how to choose school and how to prepare for their application and how to succeed in college.
All right. So maybe 5 things.
5 things.
So if I were starting all over again, think about that from that standpoint. Here are the things that I would want to consider. First thing I would want to consider is the research program and whether or not the institution is a research institution. Right? That would be the first thing on my list.
I see.
Second thing that I would want to consider is the reputation of the school. Reputation is key, right? It is an important thing, and so I want to consider the reputation. The third thing that I would really want to consider is the specialization. So then it means it's really important for somebody that's starting out from a real estate side is to think about where there's a good research institution with a strong reputation that actually specializes.
Very important. Very good advice.
You know, you could consider, we can name institutions, right? But you mentioned I used to teach at Cambridge. Cambridge has a specialization in all of those things, as well as you know, specialization when it comes to property finance, right? So those, that's really key too, right? And you know, maybe the fourth thing that I would say is location.
Location also matters, you think?
Yeah, I think it does matter. You know, for international student, I think it's important whether we're talking about it's being in a urban city, right? That's part of the location. And you know, if you're going to study real estate, it feels like it ought to be in an urban location as well.
Right? I mean, not in rural area.
As opposed to
to rural.
As opposed to a rural area, right? So that location is key. It's the key to all of real estate. So you know, thinking about location is quite important. And maybe the fifth thing would be the fit. how does it, how does the university fit with your goals and with your overall personality? You could go to a big university. You could go to a liberal,
like relatively smaller.
You could go a more liberal arts kind of institution.
Right.
So the fit is extremely important. So again, kind of thinking about my Cambridge days.
Right.
Cambridge is made up of 30 different colleges, and they're each college has about 300 students. So there's about 10,000 students at Cambridge.
Right.
But you go to a UPenn, you go to University of Michigan, there could be 50,000 students on campus.
Yeah,
right? And so it depends on fit too, right? Are you comfortable in a large institution? Are you comfortable in a smaller environment? So it really matters, I think, what the fit is for you personally. It will help you, I think, in the long term as you study and as you progress and as you succeed, like in your studies. I think fit is extremely important.
And from your experiences, what policies might be of some help for our young generation to be able to afford home ownership? And is there any potential side effect that they might need to pay attention to?
Yeah. So housing costs in Taiwan, housing costs in Taipei, housing costs here.
Hsinchu is very expensive.
I mean, it's very expensive, right? Yes. I don't know if this gives you any comfort at all, but the most interesting thing is it's not just a Taiwanese problem. It is a problem everywhere, right?
Yes, worldwide.
So let's ask this question more generally and say, okay, well, what are the problems? Why are housing prices so high here in Taiwan, as well as in London, as well as in Tokyo, as well as in New York and other places?
Right.
And I think there's three basic reasons why.
Why?
First, is an urban core discussion, right? So as urban cores get built out, it puts constraint on housing supply. So as the urban core in Taiwan or here gets built out, all of a sudden there's less supply. And as there's less supply of affordable housing, causes prices to go up.
Right.
And so the urban core is an extremely important thing. And we could see that building up of that urban core everywhere. Right. You could see it in London, you could see it in Paris, where the Olympic Games are starting, right? You could see it in New York, you could see it in Singapore, you could see it in Hong Kong, you see it everywhere, right? So it's the extent to which the urban core is built up. That's an important thing.
Right.
Second thing that's really important, and I think has a big impact here in Taiwan as well, is the impact of land use controls and restrictions. Zoning, right? It is probably one of the preeminent reasons why housing prices have gone up around the world. As we impose these restrictions, right? It affects the supply, and as we affect the supply, it affects housing prices. And
cost goes up.
And costs go up. Costs go up a lot. And you could see it here, in Taiwan, almost every place. You could see it in Seoul, Korea. You could see it in Europe. You could see it clearly in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Seattle, New York City, Chicago. You could see it everywhere. So that is a big one. And maybe the third one that I would point out is interest rates. We are in a different world today than we were 4 years ago. And I think the rise in interest rates with central banks, particularly the central bank in the United States increasing interest rates, has had a big impact on housing affordability. And it impacts all the question about young households. It impacts all the young households dramatically. As rates go up, it then becomes really hard to afford housing. And as a result, what do you do? And what I suspect happens here in Taiwan, that's happening every place else, is that people live with their parents.
They have no choice.
They have no choice, right? How do you save money, for the down payment? If you can't afford to buy currently, what do you do, right? So what everybody has done elsewhere in these kind of situations, and you double up, right?
Right.
You move back with your parents. You might stay with your parents for much longer period of time. And the problem has only gotten worse because interest rates, because of the European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve in the U.S. raising interest rates globally has had a big impact on housing affordability.
True.
And so what do I do? Again, if I were in that situation, starting out again, I was a young household, what do I do? I need to save for a down payment so that the mortgage that I end up actually getting is then something that's more affordable, right? And the only way I could do that is to save more money. How do I save more money? You know, I probably move back with the parents for quite some time. I don't know, you know, it's what else is there to do, right? I mean, how else do I do this? So saving is an extremely important thing, and the more I can save, the more down payment, the lower the mortgage, the lower my mortgage cost, and as a result, it's probably the best way of trying to move into housing, particularly where housing prices have increased dramatically.
And Dr. Shilling, we know you're a great scholar, and as I mentioned earlier, you have published so many journal articles and books and stuff like that. And can you give some advice to our young academic scholars and how to succeed in publishing those papers and journals?
This is a difficult question, right? So how to succeed, right? So
how?
You know, as I think about sort of the formulas for success and think about sort of the papers that I published and think about why were they publishable and why are some papers not publishable. Yeah, I was a journal editor for 9 years, so I kind of had seen a lot of things, and we had made a lot of decisions on what to publish, what not to publish. And I think the most important thing is the contribution. When you think about what it is that this paper is doing, that a novel contribution is probably the first and foremost thing that is going to determine whether or not your paper gets published or not published. So novel contribution is first and foremost. And then having a direct question that you're going to answer. So it not only needs to be a novel contribution, but the question needs to be so direct that you could be able to explain it in a sentence. I am studying this particular topic because. And if you can't articulate that in a single sentence, then you need to rethink the research, you need to rethink the contribution, because in essence, that's people, when they read your paper, that's what people will want to try to understand, right? Is it a novel contribution? What's the question? And how important is that question that you're trying to address? So novel contribution, important question, methodological rigor, right? So we've, and now I speak from an old timer to the younger generation. So the younger as the generations progress, the methodological rigor just changes. And it exponentially changes, it's exponentially growing with AI, with machine language learning, with big data, right? It's just mathematically expanding. So we have to have an original contribution, we need to have a good question, and the rigor, the methodological rigor, is extremely important. Finally, after checking those, right? Do I have an original contribution? Is the question clearly specified? Are the models that I'm using, the analytical approach that I'm using, is it methodologically sound? Once I decided all of those things, those three things, probably the fourth most important thing that will determine whether the paper gets published or not is the application and implication. Right? So what is the application of the research? What's the implication of the research? And how is it going to impact,
Anyone,
since we're talking about real estate, right?
Okay.
So how's it going to impact the real estate community? How's it going to impact the real estate market? How's it going to change things, right? How's it going to make life better or life more affordable? Those are extremely important questions, right? So I think the implication is extremely important. And then, the last one is probably just the write-up, right? So the question then becomes, if I have all of those things, right, now the write-up becomes extremely important. So in the past, I remember a long time ago writing a textbook. And I would write the textbook, I would send it out, this is really old school, but I would send it out to an editor. The editor would edit the manuscript, send it back for changes, and we would go through that iteration. Now, that process probably can still work, right? You write, you have an editor that edits, gives you comments, you make changes, and that process would still work. But, today, I hate to admit this, it's like 40 years later, but today, that process is really sped up dramatically, right? Because I could be sitting there, I could be writing, I could be stumped, right, in terms of trying to articulate these views, and then I could call on ChatGPT or I could call on some kind of, some AI, right, that would help me try to clarify the language. So I'm not saying that I'm going to use AI to write, or to, write the journal. Nah, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when I get stuck, if I get stuck, I mean, the technology is such that think of it like this, that there's a co-author or an editor, I should say, like in your computer, or on your phone, right? That you could just call me. I'm stuck with trying to articulate this particular phrase or this particular sentence. How best can I, make this clear, or how best can I?
It's a new tool that you can use.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the tool didn't exist 40 years ago when I was there, right? The tool exists today. It's like having this editor right there sitting at your desk and instant feedback. And for me, that is a marvelous kind of thing. I mean, this is, again, I wouldn't type in my question. I wouldn't have, AI try to answer the question. But as I sit down there and I try to articulate answers to, here's my contribution, here's the question I'm addressing, here's how to explain the mathematical or the methodological rigor that I'm taking. How can I do that best? How can I articulate sort of those things best, right? You might struggle trying to explain the simplicity of, some kind of methodological process that you're taking. So AI, right? AI, tell me, how best to explain maybe this particular phrase or this terminology. And again,
as our good friend from now on.
I think from that standpoint, right? I think the younger generation has it much better than what we had it, way back when. So things have gotten better, and I think, things, having those kind of tools will make the research even better, when it comes to the publishing, right? Because everybody struggles. I remember having a discussion once with a senior, when I was a younger person. I remember a senior person in the field was sitting down having the same discussion. How do I publish papers, right? And, I remember this distinctly. His comment to me was that all you really need to do is write one sentence a day. And I thought to myself,
one sentence a day.
Here was the father of urban economics that I was able to sit down and chat with. And here he was telling me just to write one sentence a day. And I thought to myself, oh, well, I could certainly do that, right? And what he also told me was, you look at somebody like Hemingway. So Hemingway thought it was a good day for him, right? If he could write a single paragraph a day. And I thought to myself, a single paragraph. And when you break it down like that, you realize research is a slow process.
You don't do that in one day.
And just in a single day, if I work on one single thing.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right? I work on to think about this recommendation I got from the father of urban economics 40 years ago. Right. If I just write one single sentence a day, right?
Right.
Think about your career. This is what he did over his career. Just wrote one single sentence a day, or a Hemingway writing one paragraph a day.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. You can make, it's incredible the amount of difference that you can make in this world. Just kind of being persistent, right? That's how I took that, right? Yes. So research is something that one needs to be persistent. One needs to carefully consider, carefully deliberate. And if you get stuck on that one single sentence, again, I think in this day and age, the younger generation has it so much better than what we had, because I can call in AI to help me, right? Think about what that one single sentence ought to be. And, for me, I don't think that's changed over time. I think all I need to do is being persistent. I need to think about, can I move along my research or move along my ideas on this persistent basis, thinking about, all I really need to do is a single sentence or a single paragraph a day.
You catch up Hemingway then.
And, yeah, you catch up with Hemingway. You catch up with Hemingway, right? And when you think of it from that standpoint, it's like, for somebody that's starting out, and I remember it was true for me, it's a daunting process, right? Because then you have to understand, well, what makes for a good, we've talked about that, right? What makes for a good paper? What makes for a good research, right? That's a daunting process. And then to think, well, how do I need to write this up. I need to, hurry and write this up and move on to something else. Well, it turns out, it's a Ernest Hemingway kind of thing, right? I just write a single paragraph or a single sentence a day, and you too will make a significant contribution to the literature over time. It's amazing.
I wish I would have heard of what you just said when I did my PhD. Before I published my article, it was really tough. If I were to have AI and also heard, that's shooting your advice, my life would not be that horrible.
No,
it's so difficult to have something published.
Difficult. I agree. I agree with that statement.
And I agree with you. The youngster nowadays, I think they have new tools, good friends. They can make full use of it, and I think they are very lucky.
All right. So maybe the last thing is, this gets back to a real estate concept, right? So apologize for that, but. One of the things that we've found out over the last century is that urban areas are places where economic growth is stimulated. And the question you probably would ask is, well, why are urban areas so important for economic growth? And the answer is, plain and simple, that we are smarter around smarter people. Right? We're smarter around smarter people. So maybe the other advice for somebody starting out is having smart co-authors.
After today, I become smarter.
I'm
sitting right next to a smart guy, huh?
I don't know about that, but having smart co-authors, right, makes you smarter.
Yes.
Right? I mean, that's a truism, I think, for economic theory. It's a truism, I think, in terms of academia. And, you see a trend anymore that there are multiple co-authors. Before it was maybe one or two, and they've increased a lot, right? So we are smarter around smarter people, and I think having smart co-authors to work with is extremely important. And, we talked about how AI has helped with that, right? But now think COVID, think Zoom, think, remote working, right? And you realize I can work with anybody around the world.
Anyone,
I can work with people here in Taiwan. I can work with people in Japan. I could work with people in Europe. I could, it's no longer that I need to be face to face, right? It's like I could work almost anywhere. And that's another advantage that this younger generation has over, like, say, when I started 40 years ago, because then we would pick universities and institutions where there were people in your area that you wanted to work with, and that you realized that you would benefit from their experience, benefit from their knowledge, benefit from the interactions between the older people that have really succeeded well in this area, right? And now you can get that via a computer, right? And you know, whatever your link is, whether it's Teams or Zoom or Skype or whatever it is, all of a sudden, the world, it's boundless now, right?
Boundaryless.
Boundaryless, right? I have opportunities to work with people around the world, and that has certainly changed research. It certainly changed, you know, the nature of co-authorship, and it's changed the nature of the quality of work as well, right? And so, starting out, I think, you know, back to my career, I benefited from a lot of mentors, a lot of senior people that ended up learning a lot about the research process. Again, it was somewhat happenstance, right? But now I could Zoom with folks, or I could Skype with folks, or I could, you know, I could.
Now you are the mentor for many others.
You could become. Think of it that way, right? Because you could then become this. Ultimately, over time, you want to pass along, right? What you've learned in your experience, and that's kind of what we're talking about.
That's what you're doing right now.
This is right.
Young
how do
kids.
I pass along some experience, right, to the younger folks, right? And that's what we're talking about. And you know, that's part of, I think, this profession, right? So we're in academia to advance knowledge and to, you know, change the world and inspire young people to perform better, right? And this hopefully having some kind of, you know, passing the baton, so to speak, here, right?
Today you inspire me also. One word or one sentence a day. I'm going to try to do that.
That's it, right?
Really, thank you so much, Dr. Shilling. You have shared so much that, you know, I'm sure that you'll help our youngsters, our young generation, you know, they know what to do when it comes to maybe apply to school and how to succeed in school and how to successfully publish their journals, papers, and it really helps a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, and we are very glad to have you.
Thank you very much.
Wish you to come back to Taiwan and more often.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.